My name is Feighrey. I'm the CEO of mWater. We're talking today about SDG 6 monitoring in the capacity of fragile states. mWater has a free user base in 191 countries, but we also worked with 32 countries so far to build national management systems. And we're going to be talking to you from that experience base today. There's a bit of delay. So I want to begin by just talking about when we say SDG 6 monitoring, we're talking about the generate stage of what mWater calls the data cycle. And the behind the generate stage is a lot of other stages that produce that data, and that involves government management systems. And so we'll introduce those today. When you think about your own work, it's helpful to start by thinking, how does your work get indicatorized? How does your work get reflected at the level of SDG 6? And when we're talking about WASH systems, we're really mostly talking about the data that's generated by frontline water workers. So first of all, what are government data management systems? Very literally, it's a data workflow that begins with a data entry tool that is used by frontline workers, and it ends with real-time data that's in a relational database that offers you opportunities for visualization, reporting, and analysis. Now, a few details about that database. It's owned by the government. This is sovereign data. And second, it's not usually one database. It's usually a cohort of many. In Uganda, for example, there are 14 different official databases that are used across the MWE to do various tasks. And this is normal. Think about your own office. You probably use a lot of different software platforms. And so we have to think about, it's very normal for governments to need a lot of tools and databases to manage something so big as a national water sector. Now, just as equally important, what are not government management systems? These are not the systems that you know of the NGOs build or donors run. They're not the decision-making tools that help donors decide how to achieve SDG 6. They're not the repositories of scraped or donated CSVs of data. You might think of like HDX as a giant donor repository. And they're not mandatory open data requirements. And this last one is tricky because we all want our governments to have the data free and open and transparent, but it's something that the government owns the data and has to make that decision too. They have to feel safe to, and it cannot be.
Oh, excuse me, Annie. Sorry, Annie, sorry to interrupt your flow. Could you switch on your camera? People want to see you.
I can, I think.
If it's possible.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you can continue your presentation. You'll be spotlighted for people to see you. That's okay.
You bet.
Great.
Okay. So just getting back to this, these are all potentially extractive data practices, and that has to be, we have to be aware of that it's a real danger to fall into neo-colonial practices of using data in a way that uses governments and doesn't include governments. Okay, whenever we talk about data management systems, how does it happen? How does the data get in there? The first stage is where the data is collected. This is frontline water workers. You might think of the people who go out to report on a water point, the pump mechanic who does preventative maintenance or maintenance, the water systems, asset systems worker who is checking for chlorination residual in the pipes. All of these people do their jobs by doing filling out a survey, filling out a form, filling out a checklist that are digital. These create digital relics of their work. It's the digital infrastructure for the physical infrastructure. This provides 90% of the data in a government management system, at least. From there, it is processed. A manager will then clean that data. If it's a survey that's filled out, for example, report on a water point, they might reject it and say it's not right or fix something. Or if they approve it, they're the bottleneck that moves local data to be approved, to be visible in the national MIS. And they also are very important people because they're the people who triage that first level of data and make decisions on things that need emergent or immediate action. From there, this is where most of the people I think that are on the call today probably exist in this analyze step. Here, the government, along with stakeholders like NGOs and donors, make maps, dashboards, charts that demonstrate the data and indicatorize the data. Indicatorized data is SDG 6 data. That's one of the indicators we look at. We also look at indicators like reduced non-revenue water, increased fee collection, and access, really importantly, access. And these indicators are where most of us that are international stakeholders get to work with the government and see what's going on. We hopefully are sharing the data in the form of dashboards that are live. We don't want to print it off as a PDF. It becomes dead data and begins to decay the moment that it goes offline. If we're sharing links to URLs of dashboards, we're all talking about and making decisions about live data. And then here's the secret sauce of the whole process: the data gets used. In our system, we ask the local, regional, and national teams of the government to all meet once a month and look at those dashboards and talk about why the indicators are going up and down. Where are your KPIs right now? And that creates a culture of data-driven management. And that's where the institutional transformation really happens, is those meetings and that monthly reporting and meeting process. So let me just show you to make it just more real for you what this looks like in real time. This is RWSN. This is an MIS that we're building right now with the government of Uganda. And we're looking at Lyra district in Uganda, which has updated, the district has remapped the water atlas, and this is beautiful, accurate data. We can look at a water point in Lyra, and we'll see where it is. We'll see the most recent photos that have been taken of it. If it's functional, it should be apparently functional in the photo. Any forms that have been filled out, like a drilling log, water user committee, we can see right now we're looking at form 1, which is kind of the bread and butter reporting form for Uganda, is here. All 121 fields, if you know form 1 on paper, how it used to be, are now a digital process. And anytime that this water point is visited or updated or repairs are conducted on it, we could see that digital process. And then let's look at how it looks for a water system. Here's an umbrella water system also in Lyra. It's been mapped. It has 300 assets, part of it, that are mapped. Each asset has a page. Parent and child assets are all here. They have their own photo, their own condition. If you're going out to fix it, you should be able to know which parts you need. This is the process that I'm talking about in that data cycle. You can then see how it is indicatorized to show high-level indicators from the flow of visiting, checking on, and working on water points. So what I hope that you're seeing here is governments have a lot of capability to run management systems. They're doing great, but there are threats to, especially in fragile states, to government management systems. Let's talk about that last. Finally, in like a decade ago, when a lot of us here in this call started, there were code words that people had to talk about governments not being ready for advanced technology and monitoring systems. And that was appropriate technology. We would hear things like, sometimes the best technology is a pencil. But now we've finally moved to the stage where everybody agrees there should be a computer in every office and a smartphone in every pocket. But the new way that people talk about governments perhaps not being ready to or able to run their own management systems is verifiable data. And here's where people also will say maybe the government, maybe the donors should be the ones that run the real data. And so that's a real threat to government systems. Second is people who perhaps propose that private sector NGOs should be running the real data systems. And we want to point out that in the history of the world, the only way that anyone has scaled safely managed water to the national level is a government. That's the institution that's got to do it. And while there's very important roles for the private sector and NGOs to be collaborators and to increase features, increase functionality, the operating system is the government, and they have to own the data. Third, we're just talking again about extractive data. This is like a jewel in a mine that has been mined and taken out of the country. Data is that important. If someone is taking data without helping the government or working the government, that's extractive. That's a neo-colonial practice. And so how do you avoid that? You work with the government to use the government's indicators so that when you do a data collection event and you contribute your data to the government, it's comparable to their data systems. Even if you're doing academic research, especially, it should have a dissemination and collaboration stage in your work. And finally, emergencies. Emergencies are sometimes opportunities to bring funding and attention to data systems in a government, but they're also a threat. If, we've seen in cholera very recently, if the responding NGOs come and say, we've got better data systems, you should use ours, and then they don't share their data with the government. This is a real opportunity for policy change, to say that if you're coming to work on an emergency in this country, you need to either build a government management system and use it, or use the existing government management system. Now, here's an example of how that works in practice. In 2012, when the giant earthquake happened in Haiti, it caused the government to be severely out of control for several years, especially in the WASH sector. For 3 years, the NGOs and the clusters sort of subsumed government decision-making. When a similarly sized earthquake happened 2 years ago, the government of Haiti, the WASH sector, had a very strong data management system in place. And the then director, Myriam Dufay, was very proactive the day of the earthquakes, made a survey, sent it out in the data system, said situational awareness right now. I want to know pictures of what happened. And NGOs and her staff all were able to respond immediately. 5 days later, the cluster response did show up and say, here's a data system you should use for your impact assessment. And she handed them the results and said, I've already done it. Here we go. Let's get to work. And it was a great example of everyone coming together and letting the government stay in charge of the relief process, and much success in that progress. Much of that credit goes to the strong leadership of Myriam, and I'm very happy to introduce her as our next speaker.